Thanks so much, Alana. I just spoke with some graduate students here in Dalhousie talking about how hard it is to find housing. We are hearing this across the country, but students are particularly hard hit. There's simply nothing available. The cost of renting a place is through the roof. People are living multiple people to a single room just to be able to afford rent. Students should be worried about their school. They should be worried about their courses, worried about their careers, not worried about trying to find a place to live. And after 8 years of a Liberal government, they've not taken this seriously. They've not built affordable housing, and we are in a mess where housing is more expensive than it's ever been before. And in response to this, Pierre Poilievre is not who he says he is. They just had a conference, a convention in Quebec City, and thousands of resolutions probably were vetted, made it to the floor, and not a single new idea on housing coming out of their convention. Because in reality, this is not something that neither the Conservatives or the Liberals care about. They don't care to build homes that people can afford. I can tell you this is something I care deeply about. When I was in university, a little bit younger than some of the folks behind me, I was 20 years old. My kid brother had to come live with me because things at home were really rough. My dad was struggling with an addiction. I had to bring my kid brother to come live with me. So a 20-year-old taking care of a 15-year-old. I had to work multiple jobs to keep food on the table. I had to take care of my kid brother to make sure he never went hungry. And I know how tough that is for a student to have to balance work, taking care of someone you love, and also pursuing your education. It was tough. Those are tough times. And I'm fighting to make sure people have affordable housing so no one has to worry about that. And that's why we're committed to making sure the federal government uses the land that we have at the federal level, the power, the resources, the money to build homes that people can actually afford. We need to build student housing. We want to partner with provinces and educational institutions to build specifically student housing. There's a lot of commercial property that is now vacant. We need to partner with business using the federal powers that we have to build housing, to convert those units into dormitories. Students should be able to have affordable housing. This should not be something you have to worry about or stress about. We want to build homes that people can truly afford, and that's what I'm committed to doing. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have. Thanks so much.
En français, Jagmeet.
Right. I'm going to do that in French, and then I'll take your questions. Give me one quick sec. Donc, je viens de parler avec les étudiants derrière moi. Ils ont partagé derrière moi, ils ont partagé leur inquiétude, le fait que c'est impossible de trouver du logement abordable. C'est un grand défi et ça ne doit pas être comme ça. Et en face de ce grand défi de trouver du logement abordable, on a une première ministre qui a eu 8 ans de régler ce problème, mais effectivement, il n'a rien fait. Il n'a pas réglé les choses et on est dans cette crise. Avant ça, on a une parti conservateur était au pouvoir et ils n'ont pas construit du logement abordable. Et M. Poilievre vient d'avoir une conférence et aucune idée a été soulevée pour construire plus de logements. Je m'inquiète de cet enjeu parce que je me souviens quand j'étais à l'université et j'ai dû prendre soin de mon petit frère qui avait 15 ans à l'époque. Et je me souviens comment c'était difficile à rejoindre les deux bouts, de travailler fort pour s'assurer que je peux nourrir mon frère et puis garder notre appartement. Ça, c'est pourquoi je vais continuer de me battre pour construire plus de logements abordables. On peut utiliser le pouvoir du gouvernement fédéral, le terrain, les ressources, l'argent pour construire plus de logements abordables. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
We're going to start with one question, one follow-up. We'll start on site. We'll start with Frank from the Chronicle Herald.
So has the Liberal government met its commitment on affordable housing that you agreed upon in March 2022 and your confidence in supply deal? And if not, why do you continue to prop them up?
So far, the Liberal government has not done enough to build affordable homes. We have forced the government to do things that they would not have otherwise done. We are bringing in dental care for kids already. We brought in dental care for kids under 12. By the end of this year, we'll have free dental care for seniors, kids 18 and under, and people living with disabilities. So we're forcing this government to do things that they would not have done for people. We're forcing this government to act, and we're going to continue to do that. Our goal is not to play games like the Conservatives, not to ignore the plight of people like the Liberals. We're using our power to deliver concrete results for people, and we've done that with dental care, and there's a lot more to be done. And we're going to focus on housing now when we resume in September, or later on this month in September. When we're back in Parliament, our focus is going to be on making this government build more homes that people can afford.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. So the NDP promises 500,000 units of quality affordable housing within 10 years if elected, through a mix of measures with partnering with provinces, municipalities, and community housing partners. So how would that play out? How would you achieve that?
So the big difference between our approach and that of the Liberals and the Conservatives, the Liberals and Conservatives want to just let private developers do their thing. We know that that's not going to solve the problem. We have to be actively involved in the solution. I've spoken with builders. They're saying that because of the high interest rates, it's not actually profitable at this point in time to build the type of homes that we need for people. So that's why we're saying we've got to use federal land, federal power, and federal resources to build homes that people can afford. After the World Wars, Canada set upon a mission of building homes that people could afford. Hundreds and thousands of homes were built after the World War for veterans that were returning from the war. That's the type of effort that we need to do now. Mobilize the power that we have and build hundreds of thousands of homes that people can truly afford so that young people don't have to worry about the cost of housing. When they graduate, they can find a place to call home. We can do that, but it's going to take actively using the power that we have at the federal level to build those affordable homes. And that's what we're proposing. We're also saying we need to look at a wide variety of options, getting the GST off of affordable builds to incentivize building homes that are affordable, looking at not-for-profit and cooperative housing, using all the tools we have to address student housing as well. We've got to look at this as a broad problem because everyone is struggling with housing, and we've got to look at all the solutions.
We're going to go to Vanessa from Global next.
Hi. Can you give us some insight into your meeting today? What were some of the things that the students talked about?
We heard a lot of really tough stories. Students that were living in tents while they couldn't find housing because the vacancy rate is so low in Halifax right now. We heard about students really worried about finding a place and then not knowing if they could actually keep it because they've heard from people that their landlords end up rent evicting them. They end up losing their place. Multiple people living in one room that's designed for one person, 4 people to a room. We've heard stories of 12 to 14 people living in one apartment that's not designed for that many people to live in. Many people are saying that we, even graduate students who have some income coming in, that with the cost of living, what it's at, cost of food, cost of groceries, and the rent going up, they just don't know how they're going to be able to make it all work. A lot of worry, a lot of fear, and a lot of anxiety. And that's something that students shouldn't have to be faced with. There's already enough anxiety worried about courses and exams to have to add on finding a home on top of that. We also heard from people that have to commute. The only affordable places to live are maybe an hour, 2-hour commutes away. So people are spending all this time commuting to get to school. None of this is good for our students. None of this is good for the future of our country. If young people are more worried about finding a home and commuting rather than focusing on pursuing their dreams, that's a problem. And that's a problem I want to fix.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Some people have suggested putting a cap on international students. Is that something that you would consider?
I want to be really clear on this point, the topic of international students. International students are not to be blamed for the housing crisis we're in. What we know for sure is over the past number of years, past decades, both the Liberal and Conservative governments have just not built affordable homes. And we are in this crisis today because of subsequent governments not making this a priority. Under the Conservatives, when they were in power for 10 years, they allowed 800,000 affordable homes to be sold to rich developers to be turned into highly profitable rental units that no one can afford. And under the Liberals, we lost another 200,000 affordable homes and the housing prices have gone up. This is not by chance. This is by design. They've chosen to make our housing market really great for investors, a great place to make a lot of money, but not a great place to find a home. That is a choice. And I want to change that. We can absolutely change the way our market's structured so it actually benefits people finding a home. That's never going to be fixed if we think that the same market that got us in this problem is going to get us out of this problem. We've got to change our approach and make housing about people finding a home, not about rich developers getting even richer. They don't need more help, but people do. And that's what I'm focused on.
We're going to go to Martin from Coast Media next.
Mr. Singh, you mentioned commercial units being a possibility to free up vacant room. Are you looking at other jurisdictions, other municipalities as a precedent for something like this?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of, in a lot of urban centers across the country, a lot of commercial buildings are going vacant now because businesses are changing their models. They're not using office space the same way. And so we've got a lot of opportunity with those commercial properties that could be converted into student dormitories specifically. We've seen a project like that in Toronto. right beside the University of Toronto, on Spadina, a project where a building was converted and it's now being turned into student housing. We need to do more of that. We need to see the federal government be more actively involved in using the opportunities we have with vacant commercial properties, vacant federal land, and using that to build homes that people can actually afford, where students can actually afford. That's something that we have to do. It's not an option right now. We're seeing how bad things are getting, and without any action, it's just going to get worse. That's why we're pushing for this bold action that's really going to put people first.
Do you have a follow-up?
Additionally, what do you say to those who voice concerns about your own stake in property investment, given your spouse is holding up an investment property?
But we have a home in Burnaby where we live, and we only need one part of the home, so we rent out the basement. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. We don't need the whole space, and that gives someone else a home. Our tenant there is able to live a great life. He's got his 2 kids that come live with him, and we think that's an important thing. But I absolutely agree that for too long, the housing market has been set up and been designed to make rich investors richer. That's something I want to take on. You're not going to hear Poilievre ever mention that. You're not going to hear Trudeau ever mention that. I'm saying it directly. There's a problem if our housing market continues to make rich investors richer and people keep on falling behind. That is unsustainable. That is not something that's going to work for our future. That's not working right now. And I'm very openly saying we got to take that on. We got to change our approach and make sure housing is designed for people to find a home, not for someone to get rich quick off of. And that's how it's been for a long time. You look at Canada compared to other countries around the world, the increase in costs in Canada far exceed other G7 countries because our housing market is great for an investor to put money in and then see their profits go up. But it's not great for someone to find a home. I want to change that. And we have to change that.
Next question is from Radio Canada.
Bonjour, est-ce que vous pouvez m'expliquer comment votre approche est différente de celle des conservateurs et des libéraux?
Oui, c'est profondément différent. L'approche des libéraux et des conservateurs, c'est de faire exactement la même chose qu'on a fait depuis une décennie, ou plus d'une décennie, une approche qui n'a pas fonctionné. Quand les conservateurs étaient au pouvoir, on a perdu 800 000 logements abordables. Depuis le temps que M. Trudeau était au pouvoir, on a perdu plus de 200 000 logements abordables. Cette approche ne fonctionne pas. Ce qu'on dit, on doit utiliser le pouvoir du gouvernement fédéral, le train du gouvernement fédéral et les ressources, l'argent pour construire plus de logements abordables. On doit changer un marché qui fonctionne bien pour les riches investisseurs, mais qui ne fonctionne pas pour les familles, pour les étudiants. On doit changer notre approche pour s'assurer que notre marché immobilier fonctionne pour construire du logement abordable, pour avoir du logement abordable. On doit aussi investir davantage dans le logement à but non lucratif, des coopératives. On a des solutions et on a besoin des néo-démocrates pour forcer ce gouvernement d'agir.
J'aimerais bien savoir ce que vous pensez du commentaire du ministre du Logement qui a dit récemment qu'une des solutions à la crise du logement, ça serait de mettre un plafond sur le nombre d'étudiants internationaux.
Je rejette cette solution parce que ça montre un manque de leadership et un manque de responsabilité. On est dans cette crise du logement à cause des actions ou des inactions du gouvernement libéral et avant ça, du gouvernement conservateur. Ils ont laissé le marché immobilier fonctionner bien pour les riches investisseurs, mais ça ne fonctionne pas pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde, pour les familles, pour les étudiants. On doit changer cette approche. On doit investir davantage avec l'argent et le pouvoir fédéral pour construire du logement abordable. On doit sauver les logements abordables qu'on a avec un fonds d'acquisition qui va garder les logements abordables qu'on a. Donc, on a beaucoup des options, beaucoup des solutions, mais on a besoin des volontés. Et nous, les néo-démocrates, ont la volonté de prioriser le logement pour les gens.
Okay, we're going to go to questions on Zoom next.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move to questions on Zoom. We're going to take one question and one follow. Please use the raise hand function. On va prendre une question et une question suivie. Alors, utilisez la fonction lever la main. Our first question comes from Julie-Anne Lapointe avec Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh.
Bonjour.
J'aimerais vous entendre sur le fait que les conservateurs, on le sait, sont en avance dans les sondages. Ça pourrait vouloir dire que Justin Trudeau pourrait vouloir réagir face à tout ça. Est-ce que vous craignez que ça puisse se transformer en politique plus austère?
Je crains pour les gens. J'ai des craintes pour les étudiants. Derrière moi, j'ai des craintes pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde. J'ai des grandes inquiétudes parce qu'on fait face à une grande défi de coût de la vie qui augmente, coût d'épicerie qui augmente et coût de logement qui continue d'augmenter. Et en face de cette grande crise, et on a l'élection du gouvernement libéral et ça m'inquiète beaucoup. Ça, c'est pourquoi on a utilisé notre pouvoir pour forcer ce gouvernement d'agir. On a mis en œuvre un programme de soins dentaires pour les enfants de moins de 12 ans. On a forcé ce gouvernement d'agir pour doubler le crédit d'impôt de la TPS. On a mis plus d'argent dans les poches des familles. Donc, on a forcé ce gouvernement d'agir. Et pour répondre à M. Poilievre, c'est clair qu'il n'est pas qu'il prétend être. Il dit une chose et fait exactement l'opposé. Il dit que c'est important de faire face aux crises du logement, mais quand il était au pouvoir, on a son bilan. Et ce qu'il a fait quand il était au pouvoir, il a laissé les riches investisseurs de acheter 800 000 logements abordables. On a perdu 800 000 logements abordables parce que pour les conservateurs, c'est un jeu politique, mais ils ne s'inquiètent pas des vrais enjeux qui frappent fort sur les épaules des monsieur, madame, tout le monde.
OK, puis si Justin Trudeau devait aller justement vers des politiques plus austères, est-ce que vous seriez prêt à remettre votre entente avec les libéraux en jeu?
On va continuer d'utiliser notre pouvoir pour livrer les marchandises pour les familles. On pense dans ce temps difficile, on doit s'assurer qu'on aide les gens, on donne un coup de main aux gens. Donc, si le gouvernement propose des mesures qui vont faire mal aux gens, on va s'opposer à ces mesures parce qu'à ce moment, on doit donner un coup de main aux familles. Ce n'est pas le moment de faire mal aux familles, de empirer les situations. Donc, on va toujours se battre pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde. On va se poser des mesures qui vont faire mal aux familles et aux étudiants.
Our next question comes from the CBC's David Thurton. Go ahead, please, David.
Hi, Mr. Singh. What responsibility do you think universities have or colleges have to bear for the housing crisis that students are facing, especially international students who pay exorbitant fees? What responsibility do you think they have to bear?
Well, we propose an idea that if a university, an institution, an educational institution is welcoming international students, which is a great thing, they should have a plan in place to show how they can house the students that they're welcoming in. That is a plan that institutions should be able to provide. And we've said that they should be issued study permits based on having a plan to house students, which seems very reasonable. If you're going to welcome students in, you should be able to find a place to house them. I think that should extend beyond that and say that we've got to have a plan in place where students can be able to find affordable student housing on campus, and that we are proposing to make that happen a federal partnership where the federal government proposes or offers 1/3 of the funding, the provinces does 1/3, and the institution does 1/3 to build student housing specifically designed for students. Right now, students are competing with families or with people that have got a full-time job and good careers who themselves can't find housing. So what is a student to do? We need separate stream of housing that's dedicated for students. They're in a certain lifestyle and a certain point of their life. They need to live on campus, live close to their courses. And that's where we've got to put priority around housing. We've got to build all sorts of housing for people, but it includes student housing. And that's one of the things that we're talking about today. And that's why we're here at a university speaking with graduate students.
Okay, that answers my question. I want to move on to something else about the Conservative Convention and how they voted against gender affirming care. How do you view this vote against gender affirming care?
When we look at any kind of question around gender affirming care, when we look at kids, I feel the fundamental operating policy or value should be, what are we doing to make sure kids are safe? Are we following evidence? Are we following science? As a politician, I don't know what the right procedure is when it comes to what medically appropriate procedures are right for kids. I would trust the medical professionals around that. Politicians deciding what is okay or not okay in terms of treatment is a very slippery slope and a very dangerous slope. Politician is not coming at it with the evidence, not coming at it with what is the best practice, what is going to keep our kids safe. They're coming at it with blind ideology. That to me is a problem. That approach is problematic. And what's also really problematic for me is when we're struggling right now with the cost of living crisis, people can't afford their groceries, people can't find a home that they can afford, and conservative parties are more interested in what washrooms people go to. That was one of the convention resolutions. That was one of the ideas that came out of this convention. They're more interested in attacking kids and the care they receive rather than dealing with the real crises in front of us. Housing and the cost of groceries, to me, shows a complete poverty of ambition, a lack of leadership, and really being so out of touch with what people are actually going through. That's what I'm concerned about, that they're not really dealing with the struggles that people are going through. And I'm not surprised, because Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives aren't who they pretend they are. If that's what they're focused on and not a single idea came out of convention around how to build more homes, it shows you that is not something they actually care about. That's not something they're actually focused on. They're more worried about what washrooms people go to and attacking the care the kids receive. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Our next question comes from Uday Rana. Go ahead, please.
I think you might still be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So my question is, what responsibility you think the provinces have? Because a lot of experts have pointed out that a reason for why colleges and universities end up relying on high fees, exorbitant fees from international students, is because of provincial underfunding. I believe I wonder if you have a view on that as well.
Well, there's no question that the provincial levels of government have a role to play and they have a responsibility. I'm not interested in playing a blame game, though. I am interested in getting things done. I've seen a lot of other politicians focus on blaming and complaining. I've seen Mr. Poilievre do that a lot, blaming gatekeepers or blaming municipalities. That's not going to solve the problem. And I've seen Mr. Trudeau do the same thing, blaming others, saying it's not his responsibility, saying housing is not a federal responsibility. Neither of those approaches is actually going to build homes that people can afford. What I'm focused on is let's do what we can do. We've got federal land, we've got federal money, we've got federal power. Let's build homes that people can afford. Let's work on solutions, not on focusing who to blame. I think that approach, what we've seen from the other parties, blaming different levels of government, isn't actually going to build the housing that we need. So let's focus on solutions, solving the problem. And that's what we're proposing today. That's what we're looking at. How do we solve this problem in a meaningful way? Do you have a follow-up? I think you might be muted again.
Sorry, I was having some technical issues there. What financial levers are you expecting to use to ensure that certain kinds of housing is prioritized, whether it's rental accommodation or it's student housing? What specifically do you propose to do to sort of incentivize that kind of building that you're saying is so crucial?
Sure, there's three different approaches that we're proposing to build homes that are affordable and to tackle the housing crisis. First off, we absolutely do need private development, and to incentivize the right type of homes being built, we're proposing to waive the GST or HST off of affordable rental homes. So if a builder wants to build a unit or a building where there's affordable rent, we can waive the GST or HST. That's one concrete thing. When it comes to keeping homes that are affordable, we're proposing an acquisition fund, which would allow for affordable buildings to be bought by not-for-profit communities, community organizations, to be bought by cooperative, to keep them affordable. And the third thing we're proposing is to actively get back in building homes. After the World Wars, Canada built homes. At the federal level, we built hundreds and thousands of homes. I want to see that happen again. The federal government's got to be actively involved in the solution. It's not going to be fixed on its own. It's not going to be fixed by the market. The federal government's got to get involved. And that's what we're proposing. So those are the three approaches we're looking at. And then finally, we also have to look at the housing market itself. Like I mentioned earlier, it's designed, if you've got money, you can drop it in the housing market and make a great return. That's great for a rich investor. That's not very good for a family. We've got to change that approach. And we can use different laws, different measures to change the housing market so that it's better designed for families, for students, for working people, and not designed for a rich investor to just make more money off of it.
We're not seeing more questions on Zoom at this time, so Jagmeet, I will pass it back to you for closing remarks.
All right, well, I'm really honored to be here at Dalhousie. I want to thank the graduate students behind me. There's a big crowd of students also gathering around, so I'm going to go say hi to them as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We're going to fight as hard as we can to make sure homes are affordable. Thanks so much. Merci. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.